This is going to be a spoiler-free review of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. That being said, Mason, and this counts for you as well.
Hello.
If you really don't want to know anything and want to go in blind, maybe just avoid this altogether. And all reviews, and all of the leaked images that are literally everywhere that you can't avoid.
And all the trailers you've already watched.
That's right. Yeah.
Sorry.
Also, if you do want to leave a like on this video, we love that, don't we, Mason?
Absolutely.
That's us giving you that information, and then you do with that what you will.
I mean, we would appreciate the like.
Yeah, we would. So off the top, for me, I thought this was incredibly underwhelming. There were some things that I was like, that's pretty good. But a lot of this I was like, oof.
You know what's interesting to me about this movie is, I think for a lot of people out there, this is going to check all the boxes to make the best Star Wars film they can think of. But for an equally large group of people, this movie is just going to check boxes until it gets to the end of the movie.
Yeah,
which is
right.
more
Yeah.
how I felt.
That's, the same. Because it does feel very much like not only a course correction for The Last Jedi in some ways, but also it's cramming a trilogy's worth of ideas into one movie. And the first maybe 2/3 of that trilogy are in the opening crawl.
Yeah, right?
Without spoiling it, they introduce some elements that are just like, you're just going to have to go along with this.
Yeah. They're elements that in later years people will sort of retroactively try to apply to the previous two. They'll be like, well, when this person looked to the left,
Yeah.
they were actually referring to this character in the new movie. That's what they were looking at.
Yeah, totally.
Or probably what's also going to happen is they're going to release some comic book series to fill in the gaps.
And this is what was happening behind the scenes the whole
Yeah.
time.
Look, to me, this movie doesn't feel like, obviously it is a sequel. It's the final part of the trilogy.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a sequel to The Last Jedi because so many of the things in The Last Jedi are flat out ignored.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it doesn't feel like a direct sequel to The Force Awakens either because there's so much that happens in between that's just sort of not covered.
Absolutely.
What this movie feels like to me is a sequel to the unproduced remake of The Last Jedi. It feels like the sequel to what people wanted to see, like an imaginary movie that The Last Jedi wasn't.
I also think, though, if you are looking for something more like The Force Awakens, or you like The Last Jedi, or even you wanted something entirely new, I'm not sure it does any of that well.
You know what? But also, if you're looking for a movie where there's just ships and lightsaber battles and shooting, and you know what? You know what is good about this? This movie has Poe and Finn and Rey teaming up. They're all together. They're having adventures.
They're quipping at each other.
They're quipping. They're having their chemistry is good. Those actors are good.
They can't believe stormtroopers can fly now.
But they can fly now. They're doing a Star Wars. But what I didn't like about this movie for me is that a lot of this movie is just people saying something to set up another person saying a cool thing.
Yeah, right.
There are no real conversations in these movies. It's just someone will say something so another person can then turn dramatically to camera and say a hero line.
While they're on the way to one of the several MacGuffins they need throughout the course of this movie.
This movie ultimately it's a series of fetch quests.
Yes.
It's you need to go to one planet and find a thing. You need to go to another planet to talk to a guy. You need to go to another planet to do a fight.
Yes.
Whatever it is. It feels a little bit like watching people play a video game.
Yeah.
And if you're playing a video game, those fetch quests are fun because you're in there and you're controlling those characters. But if you're not, you're just watching people go back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I also feel like Rian Johnson's version of Star Wars, he kind of had to make that version because there were things set up by J.J. Abrams that he kind of then had to go with. And then the way he left it, it felt like, to me, a definitive kind of ending to Star Wars in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because the villain was like, I guess it's Kylo Ren. And in this, they just they have to then establish a whole new threat. And that in itself doesn't really lead to a satisfying payoff.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, unless you like people bragging about how much power and energy they've got in them or whatever.
They've got so much power and energy. They've got so many starships.
Yeah, that's right. That being said, if you like lightsaber fights, there's 7 maybe in this movie. But I don't think any of them are as good as stuff we've had in this.
Like the Last Jedi throne room scene, which I've written here.
I was going to say that, but even The Force Awakens, the lightsaber sequence in that, even the prequel trilogies, the original trilogies, sure, they kind of look good, but they kind of lack the impact of a lot of the previous ones, I feel. And a lot of it felt very close up.
Yeah, there were a lot of sort of medium shots of like people's heads and shoulders.
Yeah.
And just holding lightsabers.
Yeah.
Whereas in our previous movies in this trilogy,
They've got room to flip and spin. Speaking of, if you love a Jedi flip and a big jump, Mate, you are in for a treat.
If you were
this
like-
is Flip City, mate.
If you were like if you were like, God, I don't know how they're going to achieve the quota of flips in this trilogy by the end of this. I mean, there were barely any flips in the previous two. So many flips in this.
So many, yeah. And there is a bunch of new Force powers stuff which they introduce in, every new movie.
There was kind of an evolution of a force power maybe we'd seen in a previous movie, and I feel actually that felt quite natural. Like as that power evolves in this movie, I went, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's an element that hasn't been ignored from previous movies. Cool.
Yeah. What I think also is this is a movie that's supposed to be chock full of surprises and revelations and new character arcs and villain reveals and who's who and what's what and who's pulling the strings. But I don't think I was surprised at a single point in this movie. And I'm not necessarily going into a Star Wars movie or any movie like looking for a twist or I want a big reveal or I want expectations subverted and so on and so forth. But the way the movie reveals them, you're kind of supposed to be like, oh my God.
Again, it's always a dramatic turn to camera, and then somebody has a big reveal.
Yeah.
I don't go into these expecting a big surprise necessarily, and I don't. Ideally, the trailers we watch beforehand haven't ruined these for us, so I guess we should be surprised.
Yeah,
but
I hadn't read any of the spoilers or seen any of the leaks or anything like that, so there are a lot of things that were revealed in this that I did not know, but at no point was I like, it didn't matter to me.
But some would argue, do you want to be surprised by a Star Wars movie?
I mean, if they can do a good one, sure.
Right.
And if not, don't. Which is fine also. I don't care.
For a lot of people, I feel like Star Wars is kind of the equivalent of comfort food. You go in to see space battles and lightsaber fights and cool force powers. Pay your $20 or whatever it is, and then you watch that for 2 hours and then you leave.
Because they're a mixed bag of films.
Yeah.
And the ones that you like, someone else might hate, and vice versa. Everybody has, varying opinions on them.
And again, none of these are perfect movies.
No.
Nor should we expect them to be perfect movies, because they are essentially like an evolution of a kid's movie. Again, they're Space Wizard movies.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
That being said, I felt like this was just kind of made up very late in the day to kind of not only appease fans, but kind of right the potential wrongs that were perceived with the trilogy. And I think it's to the detriment of the film. It feels very much like, how are we going to get out of this? And it was because director was fired.
Colin Trevorrow.
Trevorrow. J.J. Abrams was brought on. He's talked about how quickly he had to kind of put it together at the last minute.
Because they're supposed to have a couple of years or even more.
Yeah.
And he really didn't. And
they threw out everything after he came in.
And I think a lot of this movie felt to me like, okay, we're at this juncture of the movie. What will annoy certain fans more?
Yeah.
This or this? And they went with whatever would appease more people.
Yeah.
Not necessarily thrill people or make people go, oh, this is going to be a memorable sequence. Yeah. This is going to get people talking. It's whatever would make people not angry.
Yes.
And then they just did that over and over again for 2 hours.
Yeah. It feels safe.
Yeah.
But again, maybe that's what people want. And there are still people, like critics' opinions are mixed on this. This is still getting released the world over, and I'm seeing, a lot of positive stuff come through about it. So I think it might be one of those situations where maybe the fans end up loving it and critics don't, which is like the opposite the way The Last Jedi is perceived, potentially.
Sure.
Again, and leave your comments. I really like The Last Jedi.
I also really like The Last Jedi. We should have said that up front so people could have known.
And they could have left.
Yes, right?
Yeah. But also, I quite liked The Force Awakens, and I don't think this is a patch on either of those.
Well, see, I did too. And, critics are divided on both the prior two movies. Some people say that the first one did play it way too safe.
Yeah.
And some people say, and I personally think that it's a miracle it got pulled off as well as it did, considering it's both a sequel and a soft reboot for people who maybe have never seen a Star Wars before.
Yeah.
Which is the three people on Earth who have never seen a Star Wars before.
And I don't think they went either, to be honest.
Probably weren't going to go then. No, you're right.
Yeah, but the thing is, there are obviously a lot of things about this movie we can't talk about yet. But as some of you may know, we do have a podcast called The Weekly Planet where we talk movies and comics and TV shows, and that comes out Monday morning. We're going to do a full spoiler discussion. I just have a lot of questions. I can't get into my full criticisms or even the things that I like about this movie without getting into the specifics of this.
Yeah, very much spoiler territory. Yeah. Look, and again, there's stuff that I liked in this movie. Ultimately, I don't know if I'm disappointed. I think this movie is exactly how I thought it was going to be, but I just didn't think it was going to be very good.
Sure.
But you know what? I saw some tweets ahead of time before I went in. People going, "Oh, well, of course it's going to be garbage." When was the last time there was a good Star Wars movie? And I went, "Oh, come on, steady on, mate. This one might be fun." And then I went in and went, "Oh, actually, maybe he's right."
Yeah, and I think the thing with Star Wars movies I'm not disappointed by this because there's always another one. So, like, if this one's not good, maybe the next one will be good, or the TV show will be good, or a comic will be good. Like, there's a current Kylo Ren comic which has just started, which I'm really enjoying.
There you go.
For the first issue, at
Maybe
least.
it'll fill in some blanks.
It's
about
definitely
what happened in the previous two movies.
It is.
And
It's
then
definitely
next,
doing that.
and Ryan Johnson apparently is still getting another trilogy.
It looks that way, yeah.
So if you like The Last Jedi, you didn't like this one.
But anybody can be hired and fired at any point, so...
Yeah, that's right.
Let's just say, yeah. Anyways, I'm curious, though, what people think of this movie in general. Did it satisfy those Star Wars cravings? Did it right the course of this franchise? Did it wrong the course? Did it stay the course?
Do you just like the lightsabers and the
flips?
And the flips, because that's cool too.
That is cool too.
But yeah, like we're going to talk about on the podcast, we're going to get way more in depth. You know, we're going to talk about what we liked and disliked, but I'm definitely going to rip into a lot of this.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if that's what you listen to a podcast
Yeah.
for, we're going to do that for an hour probably.
But I think also a lot of that ripping into will be just kind of the way that this trilogy has been established over the 7 or so years that Disney have had this franchise. Because there's even stuff in this that kind of contradicts other source material that they've...
Oh no!
I mean, not that
The canon's already
whatever.
splintering.
I mean, there's always a comic that can fix another comic.
Oh my god! Thanks. Oh, that's a relief.
But also on this channel, if you do want to subscribe, there's a bunch of videos coming up related to Star Wars and the Rise of Skywalker, including an Easter egg video this Sunday. And in addition to that, we have a recent video that talks about the first time the Emperor returned in Star Wars. He was cloned. He came back. It's called Dark Empire. I'll link it at the end and below if you do want to check it out.
It's cool and fun. It's got cool animations.
Yeah,
It's a comic,
I really like the art style. Anyway,
But also, if you want to go slightly further back, we review some episodes of the 1980s cartoon Droids.
that's a bit rough though. Let's be
It's
fair.
real rough.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Up and down, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it
Star
is.
Wars.
Yeah, that's Star Wars, you know.
Anyways, thanks for watching. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, we do. Grab our gem, you guys. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.